I've seen the vibe coding and I've done vibe coding for various bits and we use it for internal tools. But yeah, as you say, once you start interfacing with the outside world, you have to be very careful. There's other issues besides the data privacy. There's security issues. There's double booking issues. Yeah, you can vibe code a website, but what logic are you actually using to create the booking? Are you blocking availability before taking payment? Or are you allowing payment to go through and in the meantime another booking came from another channel and you end up with a double booking? How are you ensuring that the website's actually legible by AI and by Google? Are you putting all the rich snippets in? Are you making sure the data structure is there? Are you building integrations to Google Analytics, GA4 e-commerce, Google Search Console, Google Tag Manager, all the nice stuff? It's very easy to get a beautiful looking website up and running with AI in 30 seconds or a minute. You could even get integrating with the PMS and you feel like you've won. But I think that's the start of the journey.
Before we bring on our guest, I wanted to talk just a little bit about something that I've been hearing a lot from hosts. I keep on hearing the same thing. I know my website isn't converting, but I can't afford $8,000 on an agency to rebuild it. Here's the thing. You're letting all these marketing strategies, you're driving traffic, and you're putting it all to work. But if your site isn't really built to convert, you're basically lighting your energy and money on fire. And even if you could afford an agency build, every time you want to test something or make a change, you're having to pay them again. You can't iterate, you can't test, and you really can't improve on things. You don't need a custom $10,000 website to get the conversion rates that really matter. You just need the right platform. That's why I built Craft to Stays. It's purpose-built for short-term rentals and designed from the ground up to help you drive more direct bookings. You can finally turn that traffic into bookings. And you can keep on testing and improving as you learn. You can make changes all on the platform. You don't need to learn something new. So if you need some help or you want to get started, go ahead and go to crafttostays.co and start your free trial. Now let's bring on our guests and dive deep into hospitality and marketing. Hey folks, welcome back to the Booksolid Show, the show where we're bringing top operators to discuss hospitality, operations, and direct bookings. On today's show, I have Na'ím from Zivu with us here today. He's grown his portfolio to 500 doors and had the difficulty of finding the right tools to scale his operations and ended up building his own PMS. And since then, he's extended his capabilities to build a decentralized OTA that allows property managers to list other people's properties and earn a commission. This is a novel way for folks to get into direct bookings without building their own direct booking engine. I'm excited for him to share his story, why he started this in the first place, and the learnings along the way. So without further ado, let's bring him in. Hey, Na'ím, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we've been looking to connect for a long while now, so I'm glad we were able to kind of get you onto the show, and actually gives me a good opportunity to get to know you much better. But welcome here. Maybe to kind of kick us off, can you introduce yourself and kind of what you started now?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Na'ím. I'm based between the UK and Albania. I started operating in the UK, built up a business at about 500 plus units. Across service apartments, guest houses, hotels, and so on. And in parallel to that, built some tech for ourselves, which I then made available to others as well. And working on how tech can serve as a force for collaboration between hosts more recently.
Yeah, it's a very interesting story. I've seen so many folks that kind of go down the path where they see this kind of big opportunity. They've grown their portfolio and then they found some opportunity or some kind of like restriction. That's actually like how we started Craft to Stays in the first place. I was looking to build our own direct booking website and I couldn't find any good solutions out there, and I ended up creating my own for our own portfolio there. What have you seen as like some of the examples of that you've kind of admired over the time?
Of tools that others have built, or how that relates to what we built?
Yeah, like other stories where like a founder was previously a property manager and they built something. Do you have any examples of like they solved the real problem?
I haven't actually used that many third-party tools because I started building my own tech a long time ago. But yeah, I can relate in the same way that I started by building a cleaning app. Because we were using different PMSs and cleaners kept missing. They didn't show up on time. And so I decided I wanted to build my own. But at some point, I realized APIs of the PMS we were using were so bad that things just kept breaking. So then I said, well, we have to build the whole PMS. And then from there.
Talk to me a little bit about that. PMS is like, we thought about the idea of like doing parts of a PMS because a lot of times we support property managers that don't have a PMS, they're only on the OTAs. But whenever I get that urge to create a PMS, I kind of shrivel up a little bit because I'm like, oh my God, there's so much that has to go into a PMS there. As you were building out your PMS, like how did you go about like thinking it? Because it's a massive, massive project there. Like how do you make it where it's a standalone? Did you maybe continue to use your existing PMS and you started building one and one by one start offloading those tasks into your own internal tools?
No, so we went all in actually. So when we decided that we were going to build the PMS we're using had a 6 month notice period, and I'd missed the previous year, so we're tied into another year automatically. So the next year I handed a notice, and then we had two developers, and I said, "Look, you've got 6 months, and I need a full PMS because I'm leaving." So this was, I think, August, and in February the contract ended. So end of January, we went live. We moved everything, like 150 units across.
Wow.
And we were flooded in double bookings like there's no tomorrow. The developers hadn't understood the concept of availability, and that availability has to be reduced every time you get a booking. So there was 2 weeks of manic. But yeah, we learned a lot along the way. And I learned how to build a SaaS company from scratch. And it's been exciting. But to your point of wanting to build a PMS, we've made the PMS free now. Zivo is completely free. So if you or anyone ever wants PMS without being tied into anything, you're very, very welcome to start using ours and offering to your customers as well.
Why did you decide to give Zivo away for free? Like PMS is like one of those, like we've seen, and I know like you guys are bootstrapped, but there's so many PE backed and venture backed PMS out there, and they're backed because there's a pretty sizable market of folks that were willing to pay for a PMS. Why did you go the free route?
Number of reasons. One was giving something back to the community. So for years, we had a free tier in Zivo, which was essentially booking engines or basic direct booking websites. I'm a big advocate of helping people get more direct bookings as a way of reducing costs and dependency on OTAs, building business on their own feet, and growing an organic business, basically. Same reason why we bootstrapped. Find like organic growth is really good. At some point, I realized that, the only people out there making serious money seem to be the OTAs, and everyone else is just left scrambling, especially with Airbnb now hiking their fees from 3 to 15.5%, and various other price hikes we've had over the years through platforms. With inflation and costs rising and margins getting squeezed because nightly rates aren't picking up everywhere at the same pace, I thought, what can we do to help all operators, all hosts, help each other? So instead of paying OTAs, I had this idea, why don't we pay each other? If we're referring bookings to each other, if we can do affiliate marketing for each other's portfolios. And that's how Z-Link was born. So the idea of having this host-to-host network with booking referrals and earning commissions when we pass bookings. And that is a very clear justification of making the PMS free, because obviously the more people we have in the network, the more powerful the network will be, and the more money we can all make and stop paying the large OTAs money in their pocket.
Yeah, so just so our audience kind of caught that, Zivo was kind of like the PMS that you've created, and it was bred out of your own kind of operations there, and you poured your own heart into it because you were trying to solve your own problems that weren't met by the other PMSs that you already had available. And then eventually you opened this up and you found kind of this new model that allowed you to kind of give away the PMS for free. You found this new model of really helping hosts market each other through what you call the decentralized kind of OTA there. I want you to dive a little bit into like what that is and such, but like that ends up becoming like almost two separate products that kind of work inside of an ecosystem of sorts.
That's right. Yeah. So they've got shared tech as well, and they sort of run on a similar platform. And the idea is, you know everything about direct bookings, right? It's about the relationship that you build with your customer, with your guest, and it's about the brand. You're building a brand, right? And often people, when they're starting off, they're just like, okay, I'm going to list on Airbnb, I'm going to list on Vrbo, I'm going to get lots of bookings. But the moment Airbnb decides that, that CCTV shouldn't have been in your yard, despite it being on the listing, you lose your business overnight. So the idea is, how do we build brands that are resilient to OTAs just on a whim, deciding that your business has to go overnight. As part of that, I feel strongly that we need to build a brand and a relationship with our customers, and we can build on that. And the portfolio that we have to offer is essentially something that's usually the rate limiting factor, and whether it makes sense or not to spend enough time focusing direct bookings if you don't have a large enough portfolio. So the concept was, if we manage to get pooled portfolios, so if we all share inventory with each other, even if we're not directly operating that property, we're not the primary host, we can still advertise for each other and help each other. So if you share your listings with me, then I've got a bigger pool that I can advertise, and I can build a stronger brand. And at the same time, if I get bookings and I share them with you, I'm helping you fill your calendar more, right? So it's sort of a win-win.
Yeah. So who's like kind of the user or the kind of the community leader? Are they other independent hosts themselves, or do you find that these are typically organizations or property managers that have larger portfolios? Who's kind of the one to kind of build that brand to attract all these users there?
So by talking to people, I found there's a real mix, and everyone seems to be interested, which is great. So We've got smaller users who are just starting off, who obviously just want more bookings. So whether that's from Airbnb or Booking.com or Vrbo or a direct site, they're very happy to join the network and receive bookings from others. It also helps some of those smaller users to showcase a larger portfolio. So if they're talking to owners, trying to win management contracts and so on, they can say that they've got a larger portfolio in their brand that they're working on, and showcase that through their websites. And at the same time, larger operators who've got an existing customer base of guests that they've been working with, and they get inquiries, and they've got spare inquiries, they've got traffic coming through their websites. So they've already built some brand. They'll obviously have a lot more overspill that they are then happy to feed into the Z-Link network and also monetize by earning commissions from it.
Yeah. So what does that look like from a monetization standpoint? Do you have smaller users that could get some sort of rev share or commissions by kind of being the marketer for other property managers? What does that look like from host to host?
Yeah, exactly. So it could be someone who doesn't even have any units, or is just starting off and doesn't want to take on the risk of arbitrage or purchasing, or hasn't been able to find customers for their management services. So they can just come and they can set up a site, and they can get people to share their inventory with them and then advertise on their behalf. So that's one opportunity. Another one is someone who's really good at marketing and has the skills. Not everyone has the skills to attract direct bookings, or is really good at sales and has built up relationships with insurance companies, corporates, and so on. And as well, doesn't have anywhere to take their bookings. So it could really be a whole variety of people and how they put it to use.
Yeah. Have you explored other communities? Like, I know, for instance, on Facebook groups, like I'm part of like a lot of Smoky Mountains, like Facebook groups there, where like there's a lot of like owners that collaborate together. There's DMOs that are basically the area guide for a specific region. They work kind of like outside, they're kind of more unbiased, but they're there to help drive overall traffic there. Have you kind of explored that space outside of kind of the host side and more organizations?
Not yet. So we're very new to this. We came out properly about 2 weeks ago. So we've got a couple of hundred hosts on there, but obviously we need a lot more. And to start with, we're launching on the host-to-host idea, because that was a primary target. But we have thought around working with DMOs, hospitality associations, mentors, anyone who's got a group of hosts around them and wants to help them get more bookings, or at the same time wants to add a revenue stream for themselves. So if any of our listeners fall in that category, I'd also love to have a chat with them on how we could work together.
Especially like the mentor side of things. Like I meet a lot of mentors, a lot of influencers that have this community that they kind of build, and they're working pretty closely with a lot of property managers that meet a kind of quality bar that they appreciate. So I can see that being quite helpful for them.
Yeah, and another use case would be travel influencers, for example, right? So travel influencers at the moment will get a free night or 2 free nights, or might get a couple of $100. But the idea is, by setting up in this way, they could get ongoing commissions on the work that they've done, royalties almost. or marketing companies or marketing consultants. So rather than going asking for money up front, you can prove yourself by showing that, I'm good at getting you direct bookings, list on my site. And then once you've won their trust, you can say, well, are you interested in my marketing services? Or even take it further. If you're a management company and you're trying to find leads, prove yourself by showing you can attract bookings for them, and then go on and say, are you interested in my management packages or additional services that I've got to offer?
Yeah. With any type of like marketplace, there's like this sort of like network effect that picks up. What's, in your point of view, what's kind of the flywheel that once it catches on, like things start to really, really pick up and you have this massive success? What do you project for Z-Link and kind of where you want to take things?
So we've tried to build a bit of a pyramid scheme around that flywheel idea. So anyone who's joining early on stands a chance of earning more, because we are giving away part of the platform fees that an incoming host pays us in the first year to the person who referred them. So if you bring us a host, you'd get 20% of what we earn from them in the first year as a referral commission. And obviously, the sooner you get in there and the sooner you refer people, the more you'll earn, because only one person can invite each target host in.
Yeah. That's quite clever. I like that quite a bit. Yeah, because it's always challenging with any type of marketplace. If you don't have both the supply and the demand there, the marketplace will kind of fall apart or not have the engine to even get started there.
That's right, yeah. So because we had existing customers on the PMS side as well, so we had a couple of thousand property managers who were already there. So we had a good base to start from, and we're just expanding it from there.
Yeah. Going on the Zivu side, you've built quite a bit into the PMS, also quite a bit into the direct booking engine as well too. What have you seen kind of historically as features that you've invested into, or certain things that property manager has done that really kind of separates kind of the clients that work really well on your platform, that gets consistent direct bookings versus folks that are kind of struggling to kind of get started in the first place? What's that delta there?
Dare I say it's probably not the tools, but it's a mindset. I know you probably know this. You'll have built sites for people who go off and do really well, and others who just let it sit there and expect bookings to flood in. And the reality is that doesn't really happen. I mean, we've built integrations to things like Google Travel and Google Hotels and vacation rentals, but again, the amount of bookings you get through by just letting it sit there is not massive. The people who get the most direct bookings are people who are actually setting up the website properly in terms of initial SEO setup, ongoing blogging, optimization for geo and SEO. We've got some of these things built in with rich snippets and structured data and so on. But it's really making sure that you keep putting content out there and you also promote your site. So, for example, in emails that we send out or invoices, we've always got a prompt of book direct and save 10% or up to 10%. Offering blocking out peak dates on OTAs to make sure that your website's the only one distributing out there when you know you're going to sell out anyway. And then even with all of that, I'd say the website bookings are a small proportion of your overall direct bookings. So we see a lot of our users get direct bookings from repeat customers. Some of them will go through the website. A lot of them will be, especially working with contractors or traveling nurses or something like that, it'll be people who are just emailing you or WhatsApping you or calling you and asking to book direct again. So we've built various tools to make it easy to take those direct bookings in the PMS, the ability to extend the booking easily, or even if they came from Airbnb or Booking.com and they want to stay a couple of extra nights, you've got sort of one-click extension. Just say when they want to check out what the price is going to be, click send. They get a link where they pay and it's done. Secure deposit, payment, rental agreement, data collection, whatever you need. It's sort of looking at the entirety of the different routes through which you can absorb direct bookings and making sure that you've got tools to deal with all of those rather than just one avenue.
Yeah, I agree with you on that side. I think the property managers that do really well is, like you mentioned, really focus on the mindset of like, how do I think about the entire engine, not just one part of it, and that it's direct bookings is not like an OTA where you start to spin up your site and all of a sudden you now have 50% direct book. It doesn't work like that. And whoever promises you that story is probably not telling you the full truth there. It does take energy there. It does take, and there's many different paths to do it too. Like you mentioned, repeat bookings is one path. The organic SEO, AEO, GEO is another path there. Email marketing is another path there. Social influence is another path. And there's no right or wrong answer to do things. There's not one path that everybody should take. I think the nice thing about our industry is that everybody comes in from very different walks of life, very different experiences. The hospitality, the types of stays that they have are very, very different. And therefore, when you're trying to go out and market, it oftentimes it comes internally of like, what are your skill sets you're really good at? What are you passionate about? And how do you do it? Like, there are a lot of stays that just really, really good at hospitality, and they build up a book of business because their guests really enjoy staying with them and they want to stay with them. And as long as you have that funnel to kind of bring them back, you have to build that funnel. They're not going to automatically come back repeatedly. But if you build that funnel in there, you can do amazingly well, especially because that stuff compounds over time. That repeat guests, every single year, you're hosting another set of guests there, and some of them may be repeat, but you also get exposure to new ones. And over time, I've seen hosts that 3-4 years into it, most of their book of business, or a good chunk of their book of business, is repeat bookings because they have their hospitality well dialed, they have their email marketing to bring them back into it well dialed there. So you got to kind of find the right recipe that kind of fits the ingredients that you have.
Yeah, very true. And I'd say, as you say, hospitality is where we're at. We're in the hospitality business, right? So we need to stand out. And that's also one way of differentiating from the service you get by booking through some large multinational company like Airbnb. If you're booking direct, you get that relationship. And you're also able to serve the guests a lot better. I'd say it's also about sales as much as it is about marketing. So yes, working on the website, working on the SEO, the GEO, AEO, all of that is great. But you also need to actually dial people up, I think, and build up the relationship. So one thing that we did in our property management company was every time someone booked, the moment they book, whoever's on shift calls them, finds out a bit about them, why are they coming to the area, finds out whether they want, they're planning another trip to the area, or finds out if they're interested in staying in another part of the country where we have something in our portfolio. Now with Z-Link, we can even distribute them to other operators if we don't. But the more you do, the more proactive you are in creating these bonds with your guests, I think the more successful you'll be in the long term at driving the direct bookings.
Yeah, I think just to interrupt you there for a second, I think that does two things. Like when you start to reach out to your guests, you get the ability to create that relationship, that one-on-one relationship, but it also gives you a lot of data on how you should be approaching your guests. Why are people coming to your area? And that also helps you on the content side of things as well too. So if you are optimizing for AEO and GEO, you're writing blog content, and you have a good intuition now because your team has called every single one of your guests and you understand why they're visiting you. That's a huge wealth of information that you can use to help make sure that you're generating the right type of content to attract more of those folks organically.
Yeah, exactly. And that was a point I was going to make, that you need to also look at data when you're working on direct bookings, right? These OTAs, they have millions of data points that to really analyze them to optimize conversions. And we were talking about mobile responsiveness on websites and making sure there's conversions there, but also overall at looking at, what type of customer is staying with me, what market am I serving, who is my ICP. As I said, you're building a brand, you have to take your brand to market, you need to analyze your positioning, you have to see where the gap in the market is and who we can serve. And once you have all this information at hand, you then have to build email campaigns. You have to look at how do you drill down and go into that further. One thing we do is everyone who stays with us, we capture that information online as well as we try over the phone to get that information in, and then we try to keep engaged with them. Back to your question of what was the concept of the flywheel and the decentralized OTA and the host network and Z-Link. Same question applies to guests. How can you turn your guests into your biggest promoters and getting them to be evangelists and bring more guests to book with you? So one of the things we've developed over the years is an ability to create voucher codes. tied to certain promotions. And then very importantly, being able to track every booking that you get off the back of each voucher code. And you can have those voucher codes limited by saying, I'll give out up to 10 bookings at 50% off, and then blasting that out through a newsletter and through social media or whatever it is. And getting guests to refer their friends through those codes, right? That's one of the flywheel concepts.
Yeah. I like the kind of the positioning and the kind of the way that you're thinking about it, because in some ways, some of these features are somewhat unanimous across the different PMSs, but in other ways, like the positioning and the way you think about some of these things, like discount codes, most PMSs have some sort of discount codes, but using it in a way to attract your previous guest, making sure that they're coming back to you, thinking about your email funnel and the guest messages that you send out, like how do you make that more natural and kind of tightly integrate into your PMS? I think that is kind of I don't want to say differentiator, but that's like one way to think about it, as like how do you leverage your PMS in a very effective way throughout your entire business process to make sure that you're, one, delivering on the right hospitality, but two, that you're able to leverage that as a marketing tool as well.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say there's 2 points related to that. One is I always say the devil's in the detail. That's why I built my own PMS, because everyone claims they can do everything. When you actually start using it, it's not that useful. But the other point is most people are underutilizing their PMS. And they probably don't need to switch their PMS. They just need to put their thinking hat on and come up with a marketing strategy and see how do they drive more direct bookings with the tools that they have. If they really feel they've outgrown and they've pushed the tools to the maximum, then it might make sense, to look at a new tech stack. But it's not always the case that you actually need to look for a new PMS. You'd be amazed if you talk to your PMS, you'd find out they have, as you say, a lot of those options built in. The one thing I'd caution against is looking at paid ads as the main way of driving direct bookings without first having built all this, funnel data capture system and structure, and being very clear on how you're actually going to use the leads and make sure that you maximize the lifetime value that you get out of each of the leads. And if people actually want to go into paid ads, be very, very careful to make sure that you can track the data all the way from when that guest first sees your ad to when they've booked. And you can look at things like which rate plan they book on, if you've got multiple rate plans, or how long they spend on your site before they convert it, which buttons did they click on to get to the checkout point, which campaign did you spend money on, how much did you make back from that campaign, what is your ROI? Are you paying more than you would be paying OTAs for paid ads? Take into account, your marketing staff, your sales staff, design costs, whatever it is on top of that, and make sure you get a real ROI figure and compare that to the cost of working on an OTA. And the OTA itself can be top of funnel for you, right? So it's not the only way to go in direct bookings. And as you said, I fully concur, direct bookings is a long-term game. You're not going to crack it short-term, so don't go and burn cash on ads.
Yeah, I wouldn't usually recommend someone doing paid ads until, like you mentioned, that they have their funnel baked in, their recapture system baked in, that they have pixels, they have a full funnel view. Usually you can blow a ton of money. If you start running ads and you see the spike in traffic, but you don't know kind of where they're dropping off, it's hard for you to optimize for it. And unlike other organic kind of methods, like ads can get very, very pricey very, very quickly. And you can spend a whole bunch to bring in a lot of traffic, but if you don't have it optimized, you just blew through all those leads. And if you want to try it again, you'll have to then spend the money to run your next set of ads. But I kind of like the difference between that and doing something like SEO and AEO, like those things kind of build over time. It gives you consistent traffic that you can then optimize on an ongoing basis. So usually, like, I think for me, my first recommendation is really take advantage of really the hospitality that you already deliver and make sure that you, one, are giving a good experience, making sure that every guest wants to come back to you, and then two, giving them this funnel for them to keep you top of mind the next time they're thinking about a trip. So a lot of that has to do with making sure you're capturing their email marketing them in a very consistent basis. That's actually like the first thing I would recommend someone doing, even before setting up an Instagram account, setting up an ads account, do that, and then put in Google Analytics, understand your funnel view. Those are kind of like, and then you can figure out like, okay, where do I want to go next? But if you don't have that funnel and the analytics there, you can easily bleed and not know where your marketing spend is actually going.
Yeah, yeah, and I'd also go further and say, depending on portfolio size and how much time and effort you want to put into it. But if you're at a certain scale, you also want to be looking at segmenting your customers, right? You might have different types of customers staying. So you want to make sure your CRM you can filter by people who are there for business, people who are there for leisure, and you can drill down into that data, and then run campaigns that are specific at them, especially if you're trying to do outbound targeting as well.
Yeah. Do you recommend any tools to kind of help with that segmenting and kind of email marketing or any type of marketing there? Or did you guys end up having to like not find any good tools out there and you end up building it yourself internally?
So we built a lot of it internally. So we've built a whole data capture both for newsletter subscriptions to the websites, but also most importantly, anytime we get a booking from any channel, we get them to go through our online check-in process / guest portal pre-check-in form. And part of that is capturing not just the email address, but also the marketing consent opt-in. So in Europe, obviously, we've got GDPR, which is data privacy protection, which, by the way, also applies to hosts in the US or elsewhere in the world who are hosting even a single guest from Europe. So yeah, we capture that information, go straight into the CRM that we've built in Zeebo. We've actually built a couple of CRMs, 2 for guests, 1 for individuals, 1 for companies if you're working with corporates, and 1 for owners to help with the sort of owner acquisition side. And then we've got automated messages that you can trigger at different points of the life cycle, and we always blast with book direct, as I said, in the footers of the emails, HTML emails and the invoices, book direct with a link to the website. And then we also have the voucher codes that we've developed that work with that, with the booking engine and the websites, and the ability to send those out, say, a week after the stay or a month after the stay. Come and stay with us again, or refer a friend, use this code, they'll get 5% off. All those sorts of bits and bobs.
Yeah, you mentioned a few things that I found interesting, kind of more on the compliance, website compliance side of things. You mentioned the GDPR, you mentioned the consent there, and that makes me a little bit nervous in kind of the day that we're now, where a lot of folks are now vibe coding a lot more. We're seeing people even vibe code websites there, and it makes me a little bit nervous because when I look at some of these, they don't have some of those fundamentals that we had to learn, and we had to kind of learn about the compliances. We did a full sweep of kind of California compliance. Well, I'm in California, but like we've seen kind of folks not having their websites accessible, so we had to like spin up weeks and weeks of learning about like how do we make sure it's accessible, how do we make sure that we have the right privacy policies in place, the consent manager, all those different things. And it makes me, again, like a little bit nervous that folks are now vibe coding their own websites with some of the things kind of not in place there. I don't know if you've seen kind of the same thing on your side.
I've seen the vibe coding, and I've done vibe coding for various bits, and we use it for internal tools. But yeah, as you say, once you start interfacing with the outside world, you have to be very careful. There's other issues besides the data privacy. There's security issues. There's double booking issues. Yeah, you can vibe code a website, but what logic are you actually using to build to create the booking? Are you blocking availability before taking payment? Or are you allowing payment to go through, and in the meantime, another booking came from another channel, and you end up with a double booking? How are you ensuring that the websites are actually legible by AI and by Google? Are you putting all the rich snippets in? Are you making sure the data structure is there? Are you building integrations to Google Analytics, GA4 e-commerce, Google Search Console, Google Tag Manager, all the nice stuff? It's very easy to get a beautiful looking website up and running with AI in 30 seconds or a minute. You could even get integrating with the PMS and you feel like you've won. But I think that's the start of the journey. And as you say, there's a lot that goes into a good website that you could probably vibe code, but most importantly, it's the knowledge. And secondly, why would you vibe code when there are solutions out there now that give you that website with tracking and everything out of the box? One vibe code, go and build your custom dashboards that help you really understand the data in your business. Like in our PMS, we've got an MCP now that people can plug and play to Claude Code or ChatGPT, whatever they want to use, and really drill down into what we were discussing earlier, right? Who am I selling to? The market. How can I improve? What complaints am I getting on my reviews? Whatever it is that you want to analyze, start working on your business. don't waste time reinventing the wheel, essentially.
Yeah, I would kind of double down on that and say like, I think there's a lot of data that we can get and kind of learn from. You mentioned kind of like using your PMS to run like using your MCP to run reports. You can also run against your reviews, run against your segment data, your marketing messages, and really help you out on kind of the full marketing piece. But in terms of kind of like the front end website of it, there's a lot of complexities. It's a commerce website at the very end of the day, and there's a lot of bits and pieces that kind of go into it that is hard for a lot of folks to learn and stay on track of. Like, it's one thing to like get that first MVP up and running, but then with like making sure that it's consistently maintained and in compliance, that's another thing.
And things keep changing, right? Tech keeps changing. You have to make sure you're keeping on top of any vulnerability changes. Integrations, PMS APIs might change. You have to keep on top of that. Recently, for example, Google spun out the forget what the shorthand was, AAOE or something, the Authority Anti-AI sort of tooling for blog posts, so that they can see, you can sort of specify what the author of the blog post says and provide a bio and so on. So it's clear that it's not AI generated content. How many people who vibe coded their website even know this is a thing, or went to update their vibe coded website to make sure that they now comply with these new requirements Google's put out there to make sure your website doesn't end up on the 10th page, but keep staying on the top of the first page. So
yeah. It goes on and on. Na'ím, we usually end the show. Yeah, I love to geek out about that stuff. We usually end the show with 3 questions. So kind of the first question first. What's a book that has influenced kind of your career or your life?
It's a good question. Career, probably one that stands out is The Balanced Scorecard, which I read just before COVID hit. And I know it's not sort of the most modern take maybe on running business, but I found a lot of it very useful. And there was one particular paragraph or sentence about a case study where a business had separated out the running of the business and the factors that it could control with the outside market and changes in the market. And it just talked about how they managed to navigate a very difficult situation by sort of consciously being aware of what they'd built, and that the problem was just temporary market conditions. And then soon after that, COVID happened, and obviously everything went mayhem, right? And I was just building up my property management company at that point, hit like 250 units or something, ended up losing about half of them somewhere on fixed rents arbitrage that we just handed back, said, look, I don't owe you any money. I'm not allowed to put anyone in here because the government shut everything down. So you can either have the keys or switch to a management deal on a commission basis. Some of those people did, some didn't. So we lost a lot of the portfolio. But equally, what I've come to realize, thanks in part to reading this book, is that I'd built up a huge amount of institutional knowledge and human capital and a team that was running all of this. So I thought if I managed to keep the team together and I managed to continue building that, even if I'm losing money in the short term, I'll borrow, I'll do whatever it takes to get to the other end of this beast that we're faced with and seems to be going on for forever. Surely at some point, there'll be an end to it. That's exactly what we did. And I thought, whoever survives this period will be strong on the other side and be able to conquer more of the market. So yeah, that was one very influential book for me, and I guess the biggest takeaway from that book.
Yeah, it sounds like it came at a very serendipitous time when it was most beneficial.
Yeah, it did indeed.
Awesome. Second question is, what's one piece of mindset advice that you would give to someone that's starting something completely new?
Specifically within our niche, I'd say don't rush it. I don't know if it applies to other niches, but maybe be data-driven, could apply to any niche, and make sure you've got systems and structure and processes in place before looking to expand. Especially in our niche, there's so much involved in running a property and so much firefighting. 3 a.m. guest message and the fire that goes off and smoke alarm that wakes up the neighbors and get the fire engines in. Make sure you've thought things through and scale at a pace where your learnings can be documented and can be captured and can be turned into systems and processes that will mean once you start bringing people on board, you can train them properly rather than let them decide on the spot on how to deal with different situations. And once you get to the point of hiring people, make sure you really spend time, which is something I didn't do enough of. Make sure you spend enough time training them on the systems and processes you've set up. The one skill that I'd say is really worth trying to learn, which has taken me 10 years to get to, is drawing flows and documenting things in flows. There's a lot of tools out there like Miro or FigJam or whatever you want to use. Just put like a nice little box. If this happens, then this should happen. And if you've got a decision diamond where you're saying, guest lost the key. Okay, if a guest messages and says lost the key, first thing you do is you inform them there's a spare key. Second thing you do is you keep note that they lost the key so you can replace the lost key. Third thing you do is you call up the local locksmith who holds a copy of your key and ask them to make a copy and send it to you. Whatever it is, think through these scenarios and just put them down every time they happen, document them really clearly in a visual way. Or at least I love visual. I don't like long written documents, difficult to read. And then you've got your training materials ready. So whenever you bring someone in, you can either spend time with them going through it, or you can say, please take a look at this. And if you have any questions, let me know. And when they find themselves in that situation, they've got a very clear step-by-step guide on what they should do.
Yeah, it kind of lowers the anxiety on both sides of it. You as a leader, you can know that your team is delivering a quality, but also the team is not kind of rifling through and making guesses. Like, it's not a good experience for a new team member or even an established team member to have to figure things out or perhaps relearn something that another team member has learned previously. Because all these workflows, they happen because you've been through it once or you can anticipate it happening. And there's some thought that goes into it. And if you can think about it and harness that once, it kind of leverages itself ongoing, especially as your team may grow or you may have to hire new folks into it. It's just a great resource for you to kind of invest into.
Yeah, I'd say, it goes hand in hand with the branding and the marketing. So one side is capturing business, and the second one is delivering. And these flows sit at the heart of the quality of what you can deliver. Whether you automate some of them by using AI or using PMS or using whatever tools and integrating things up, that's just one way of you delivering your hospitality service to your guest. So making sure that those are documented and you keep improving them. It's not, you've got a first version, something else happens, you go back and improve it. But making sure that you do that on an ongoing basis is obviously very, very important, I think, to the long-term success of the business.
Yeah, absolutely. Last question. We talked about a lot of different tactics that property managers can put into practice to either get started in direct bookings or amplify the direct bookings. What's one tactical takeaway that you would kind of recommend to them to either grow or get started in the first place? What's something they can do in the afternoon?
Join Z-Link. It's basically direct booking expanded through the power of community. Should take a couple of minutes to join. You can copy and paste your Airbnb link if you're already listed on Airbnb, and we'll scrape the information and produce a listing for you in a couple of minutes. Other than that, think about your business as a brand, and think about what market you want to serve, and start capturing data. We talked about this a lot, right? Start collecting data to prove whether what you think is right or not, and then keep iterating on that.
Nice. Now, it's a huge pleasure to have you on here. For folks that want to kind of keep in contact with you, how can they best reach you?
You can visit my website, na'imanispaymán.com. I don't know if we can include that in the caption or something, or z.link. Z.link. You can book in a free consultation there, and I'll be very happy to have a chat with you. I try to talk to everyone myself and welcome them into the network and see how we can collaborate.
Awesome. Again, I appreciate you sharing kind of your knowledge, why you started at PMS in the first place, your journey through that, and now creating Z-Link there. So I appreciate you kind of walking us through that entire journey and kind of all the little nuggets that you learned along the way.
Well, thanks for your time. People can find me, on Facebook and Instagram, LinkedIn, and all the other places, of course, as well. And feel free to message there. I pick up on all my messages.
Awesome. I'll be sure to grab those and we'll include those in the show notes.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thanks. Till next time. Bye.